Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SSK Foundation's November podcast in honor of Veterans Day. We are so proud to present today's episode, The Journey of Women Veterans. So we're giving folks a few minutes to log on and settle in. So in the meantime, feel free to type in the chat where you're joining us from. And if you're a veteran yourself, we'd love to know that too, so we can recognize and honor you tonight. Hello, Karen, USAF veteran from Virginia. Awesome. We have Alaska, we have North Carolina, we have San Diego, SF Bay Area. I love it, countrywide. So today, we're joined by three inspiring women who served our country with courage and grace, and they're here to share their personal stories of service, sacrifice, and resilience as women in uniform. We'll get started right now, so I hope you have some water and tea and settle in for a meaningful conversation. The SSK Foundation, which stands for Strong, Smart, and Kind, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to serving our community through three core pillars. Mental health, our top one here, offering tools, conversation, and education to break stigma and support wellness. Our next pillar is women empowerment, helping women find their voice, their power, and their place at the table. And our last pillar is youth leadership, mentoring and shaping the next generation of strong, smart, and kind leaders. What makes SSK Foundation unique is that every single member of our team is 100% volunteer. We believe that if you can show up on time and genuinely want to help others when you're not being paid, will tell us who you really are. Because everything we do here is rooted in compassion, community, and connection. And today is no exception. So now it's my honor to introduce our very special guest this evening, three remarkable women veterans who exemplify service, leadership, and resilience. First, we have Teresa Rivers, who dedicated 34 years in the Air Force, blazing trails for women everywhere. Today, she brings her expertise and vision to the U.S. Space Force, supporting mission-critical programs at the highest level. Next, we have Dixie Banner, who served 8 years in both the Navy and the Air Force, demonstrating extraordinary adaptability and resilience. With a career spanning leadership in defense and energy industries, she also advocates passionately for employment opportunities for rural veterans. And finally, we have Carmen White, who served 6 years in the Air Force, inspiring her peers with her courage and leadership. Now, as Chief Operation Officers at Vets to Industry, she leads efforts that create meaningful change for veterans and their families nationwide. So, Teresa, Dixie, and Carmen, thank you so much for being here and for letting us honor you this Veterans Day by sharing your journey. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing the slides and I'm going to highlight our speakers. So let's dive into today's conversation. And this first question is going to be for all the speakers. So I'm going to start with Teresa first. What motivates you to join the military, and at what age did you join?
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me, Teresa. It's such an honor to be here at this podcast. So my story began when I was 19. My mom told me, sorry, there's no money for college. Go figure it out. And we had just moved from the Philippines, all the way from the Philippines to the US. And I was like, okay, what do I do now? My uncle was actually the one who told me about the military. So the goal was to join, get the GI Bill, get out, and then go to college. Very square, very planned. And of course, life had other plans. I got pregnant at 20, needed medical care, and ended up staying in. Best decision.
Awesome. Thank you. And how about for you, Carmen?
Well, when I graduated high school, I went straight to college and I didn't know how to act. So my grades weren't that great. And my grandmother, she was really big on you have to contribute. You have to do something. So I knew I couldn't just sit around all year and do nothing. So I was like, well, I'll go in the military. Like Teresa mentioned, I was like, they could give me money for school, good to go. So I started off in the Army Reserve. And while I went to basic training and did all that. And then I was doing my drill. I met a friend. During that time, I started going to a local college. And my friend just recommended, hey, why don't you do Air Force ROTC? That way you can finish the rest of your time. You'll be an officer. And that's what I did. And so basically, I wanted to pay for school. And that's how I started my military journey.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Dixie, how about for you?
I went to college and got my degree. And then what I did was something that I've always wanted to do on my own. I have my own benefits. I didn't want to say, well, it's my husband or my brother or whatever it may be. And it was something I wanted to do. But at the time, a lot of women didn't go.
Mm.
It was kind of a negative situation. Went to overseas to Australia, came back, and I said, brother was already in. And so it's like, hey, I'm going to do it. If he can do it, I can do it. My dad did it. I want to make a family tradition. But bottom line is, I went in at 24, and it was kind of difficult because I already been out in the real world, and and coming in and enlisted, it was like we were supposed to be treated like 18-year-olds. So I got to the concept is like, hey, I've eaten macaroni and cheese with those guys in college. They're no different than but I'll play the game. But the bottom line is I realized I wanted to eventually go in and get my commission, but I didn't want the responsibility. And so all in all, but benefit was is to be I had all my cousins. I'm the only girl in my family that has all served, and I wanted to be just like my dad and my cousins and my brother.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're going to go back to this because what I'm hearing is that because of the GI Bill, you get to have that education paid for. So it's a good opportunity for those who don't know what to do after graduating from high school. This is a good opportunity to get your college paid for. We'll come back to that. But Dixie, you actually mentioned on this about you already have some experience in the real world before coming in. So you already have an experience of being an adult.
I had the experience as an adult. I had the book work, but I didn't have the real world experience, and that's the key to the solution.
Yes. In that case, as a woman in uniform, what were some of the unique challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
A lot of them at that time, every woman that went out, a woman that could be replaced. At that time, it was really, truly a man's world until the 90s when Iraq came online. Women were still challenged, and we didn't actually go on a ship until 92, 94. We were still, and then when I went in, I went on land-based rate, so I actually was very, very neutral. But if you were out in the fleet, it can be really challenging.
And how about for Teresa and Carmen? Did you see or feel any difference in treatments or regarding between a female and a male militant?
I think for me, the biggest challenge was finding my voice and getting heard, especially since I'm kind of short in stature too, 5'2". And then the career field I got into as an officer. So I started off enlisted, eventually finished school, and then got selected for officer training school and got my commission. I ended up in acquisition program management, and I looked around and wow, most of them were male Caucasians, which actually worked out in some instances because of the bathroom situation. So when we were in meetings, their line was longer than mine. So I was like, yes, finally. But it's that voice. I was super timid starting out. And if an officer told me, go wash my car, I probably would have done it without asking any questions. And then what happened was we were in an exercise in Alaska. And I had to work a night shift after just giving birth to my son, get the maternity leave, and then after that, you have to go back to work. And I was like, man, night shift, but I didn't want to complain. I didn't want to be the one to rock the boat. And then somebody actually asked the question, hey, I'm taking classes. Can I move to the day shift? And holy cow, they just gave it to him. That's when I realized I could have said something. I could have asked the question. And I did not. That's when I learned to find my voice.
So for someone that's timid, is an army or joining the military a good place for them? My daughter's very timid. So I'm trying to ask, is that a place for her then?
I think I was forced to find my voice. So it was good for me, right? Because you'll get to a point where you're getting pushed and prodded, and then you'll just find it. Because you're looking around and asking, I can ask too.
Yeah, it has to be that limit, right? Where enough is enough. You can only get beaten down so much. And I love that fact that you found your voice. So I'm going to switch it over to Carmen because I think, Carmen, you shared before that you have your voice, but it's now how to define your voice or when to use your voice. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I don't think for any of us it's about finding your voice. We already have it. We just need to learn how to use it and be effective with it. So like for me coming into the Air Force as an officer, I had a certain cushion because there are certain customs and courtesies that I'm going to be shown because I'm an officer. There are stereotypes as a woman, but for me, again, there were mentors who would say, okay, this is what you do in this situation. This is how you say that. And my father gave me some great advice right before I went in. He said, Carmen, you need to join the Officers Club. And I was like, why would I do that? I don't want to hang out. I just want to go to work and go home. And he said, no. He said, working is just as much about networking and getting to know the people you work with as it is actually doing your job. So I did that. And I'm so glad I did that because for us at that time in the squadron that I started out with, going to the Officers Club on Friday, the last day of the week, was required. We had all the officers had. It was a chance for you to network, get things done outside of the regular working space. So I learned early on because I had mentors that said, hey, this is how you use your voice in this space. So rather than if I was frustrated because I felt like I wasn't being treated a certain way, instead of just saying it the Carmen way, which might not be effective, I learned how to say things the correct way, the effective way, rather, that the change that I wanted could be seen. So it's just all about learning how to use your voice because we already have it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just gets softer and softer because we go to spaces and we might feel like no one is listening to us. And that may be the case, but sometimes you're just not saying things in the right way. They don't understand you. So you really have to learn your surroundings really quick.
Yeah. Love that you mentioned the word mentors because I'm a firm believer that you should have mentors in all aspects of your life, whether it's marriage, business, spiritual, whatever it is, because I think that as good as you think you are, there's always somebody better. And we can always learn. Until you die, you can always learn. Should keep learning. So with that being said, what are some common myths or stigmas about women veterans that you wish more people understood?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I think one big one is that we're not real women. We wear the uniform and you don't necessarily have to wear our hair within regulations and the makeup regulations. They don't see us as real women. What's a real woman? Why would you discount someone because they wear a certain uniform? She doesn't know as much. You might say one thing, someone else says the same thing, and then it's the perfect solution and you just said it prior. Just navigating those stereotypes. A woman does not mean you're less of an airman or less than a soldier. And I'm really glad when I came around in the military, things were better. Like women before me, I can't imagine how hard it must have been to have to swallow all those stereotypes, all that breaking you down. And we didn't really have to do that. We stood on a more equal ground and could be like, hey, no, I'm not doing that, or yes, I'm doing that. Or we could ask why. We could ask. My mom was like, you ask a whole lot of questions, but I was like, no, I need to know what I'm doing. I want to know why I'm doing it. And I want to know how it's going to be beneficial. If I'm telling people to do things, I need to have all the answers and or all the scenarios so I can be right in what I'm doing. But that was not something that was allowed before. So
that's amazing because that was the main reason my dad told me I can't join the Army after high school was because I tend to ask questions. I usually say why before I say yes or no. Since you were talking about, Carmen, you're talking about people who came before you and the culture being different. So I'm going to switch over to Dixie. What myths do you feel like, that's not true, that you wish more people would know about?
Today, you guys have the ability to balance. In the past, you didn't. And the thing is, even when Carmen came in way after I did, we were still operating in a man's world because I had a watch officer. She basically had kids and made a choice. She had to make a choice, kids or her career. She gave her kids in the house to her husband, who was also active duty. And kids were looked pretty challenging, but she looked beautiful. And her career was all 100%. But yet her kids had some challenges. And I knew that immediately after seeing that, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to be a parent and I wanted to be a family. Because in the past, you guys don't understand. It was your mother, your grandmother, your aunts who broke the ceiling. You guys would not have the ability what you have now. And I've talked to people that are older generations, they were beaten down as a female. And if they did disagree or make their voice be heard, they got punished. And so today, these girls don't understand what they have because it was the prior generation. And the prior generation actually has some challenges because they were never recognized, but yet today now they're being recognized. But in the past, they broke some hard ceilings. And that's kind of why I'd like to do generational mentoring, because I think some of the older generation, and I was told if it wasn't for the older generation, we wouldn't have the pack, we wouldn't have the uniforms that we have. There's a lot to this bigger picture, but I think younger ones need to stop and think. Have is a blessing, and having the ability, because I asked questions too, and I was always in trouble too, and I'm smart, but they didn't like a smart person because they were challenged, and I just played the game. But the bottom line is we have to learn and teach our younger generation how to make decisions, how to communicate in a wiser way. Because some of these kids that are coming in, they don't know how to assimilate in a big system. And going out to the fleet is nothing like being around your mom and dad. Your chain of command changes completely.
Yeah, Dixie, I think you hit it right on the spot because sometimes people forget all those who came before them. If it wasn't for all these women who fought and protested, we women wouldn't have the right to vote these days. So that's just one example. But I think that we constantly have to remind not just the next generation, but even for ourselves, myself, right? How to be confident and take what I should be allowed without being entitled. I think we should ask questions, but not ask question in a way that is disrespectful. It's more like, let me understand so I can do my job properly. So I don't get us all killed.
Right.
So I think that mentorship is so important. Let me teach you because I've been there, done that. So let me bring it to Teresa. How about for you? Did you have any stigmas or stereotypes that you wish more people would know about women in uniform?
I think my answer is similar to Carmen and some of Dixie's answers too for all the trailblazers. Otherwise, it would have been worse for us. And it is definitely getting better because, like, now they can wear the ponytail, whereas before you have to have your hair tight, and my hair actually broke behind me and my back. That was bad. Migraine headaches. But now they can wear ponytails. And maternity leave has expanded to that program. And then they added the paternity leave. Stigma or myth that you have to act like a man because you're in a man's world, but I just had to be me. And I shared previously my deployment to Afghanistan. I actually deployed with mostly Army because I was with the DCMA, Defense Contract Management Agency. So we deploy individually. And the team was Army, so the training was at Fort Benning. And this Army gal was teasing me, and she was like, "You think you can keep up putting on the makeup and everything while you're deployed?" And I said, I think so. I think I can do it. And I did. It was just staying true to myself and not being influenced by my environment.
Yeah.
Because I saw that too while I was deployed. It changed a lot of people, and it showed you who you are, what you're really made of. Because I'm not kidding, some people actually broke and wanted to go back home. And this was in 2009 when the condition was still, it wasn't bad. Troop strength was at the top. We were pouring money in there. It was not that bad. The other myth is that if you speak your mind, then you're a B word. If you ask too many questions. But you know what? Just be you. And honestly, do your research. Ask the right questions at the right time, and think things will just work out.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that because you're right. You just have to be yourself because everyone else is already taken, right? So you can only be you. But as civilians, we only know what we know from what we see from Hollywood movies, right? So if you ask questions, go out, do push-ups, or stand in the rain, or whatever it is, the consequence, right? So it's not like that, is what I'm hearing. That you can ask questions, just do it in a respectful way at the right time, right?
Situation. So yes and no. You still have to maintain customs and courtesies. You have to be careful of your surroundings and know what's allowed in those surroundings. So if you're given an order to go and do push-ups, which is usually just in a training environment, you're gonna do that, and it's best not to ask questions.
Got it. Otherwise, more. So we've been talking a lot about the strict sides and the life from military. I would love to talk about this myth or the expectations from the civilian side as well. And just from looking at our three speakers, different cultures, different ages, different time in the military. So going back earlier, Teresa, to what you were saying, how you were deployed out. For us civilians, we don't know what the word deploy out means, right? What is the difference between active duty after active combat? What is the different terms? What does that mean?
So honestly, when I joined the military, I never realized that I could go out to the combat zone. Like I said, my focus was on getting the GI Bill, doing 4 years, and then getting out, going to college. So when 9/11 happened, it was a shocker for everyone, I would think. And just wanting to be involved. And that was, I actually volunteered, and somebody was asking, really? And I have to admit that part of the reason for volunteering was I was going through a divorce at that time, and I was in debt. So I was thinking, okay, deployment money will help me get out of debt. And so I volunteered. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. My friends were scared for me because they were like, "You're such a girly girl. How are you going to make it out there?" And I'm like, "I'll figure it out." And then went through training, and you really don't know what you're capable of doing until you're in the situation. And I actually thrived in that situation just because looking around, I was proud of the military. I was proud of, there were so many young people just doing it, just out there, not afraid and just doing it. So I actually got my energy and my strength from them. If they're not afraid, if they can just do it, then I can do it too. And there was such a camaraderie in that situation because you're so far away from home and danger is real.
Yeah.
So you get closer with your military family.
Wow. And you coming in expecting to only stay for 4 years, but you ended up staying for 34 years. Just a little bit longer than your expectations.
Yes.
So another stigma was thinking once you join the military, you can't really leave unless you die on duty or unless you have something, right? So Carmen, can you speak to that? Can you actually leave? What's the procedure of leaving? Is it like college, you graduate and then you're done? Or can you be called back anytime? What is that like?
I can answer that, but I do want to answer your other question too about active duty military. That just means that's your job every day. You go to work wherever you're designated and you do the job that you were assigned. Deploying is you could deploy for training. That means you go somewhere else. It could be overseas, it could be to another military base supporting an operation. You could be deploying to go to combat. You could be deploying to peacetime mission. You could be deploying for training. So that's the difference in that. And then if someone is reserve and not active duty, that just means that they do a temporary service. So like a couple of times out of the month, they'll go to a base and they'll have a practice run. And so active duty just means that's your job every day. And you can get out. So like Teresa, she retired because she stayed in over 20 years. So you can do that. And there's a process to that. So you have to, it's not just like, oh, I think you can't wake up one day and just say, I'm going to retire. You can get out, but you have to follow the process. I separated, which means I did my duty. I did my 4 years to pay back my undergrad scholarship that they paid for. And I did a few extra because I liked it. I decided to get out a little earlier. They call that separating from the military. And yes, you can get out whenever you want. You just have to follow the process. So they'll tell you the dates that you can get out. That's how that works. And as far as being called back, some of us, when we get out, we are not all the way out. We might be put into a reserve or guard unit. And so if something happens and you're actively in that, then you can get called back to service to fulfill an obligation. Or then some people just choose to return. Like Teresa said, she got out and she decided to stay. So there are many ways you could do that. When you want to get out of the military, you're like, hey, I want to pursue something else. You can do that. No one is gonna hold you back. No one is gonna say, no, you got to stay until you die. It's not like that. But I will say this, we get out of the military, but the military never leaves us. It's always a part of you. There are always certain things that you still do, certain things you still say. It's just a part of us. It becomes a part of our culture and a part of our personality. Or at least I can say that for myself. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
when you spend day and night in such an intense environment, right? It really says you can take the woman out of church, but you can't take the church out of woman. Some of that, right?
Oh, yes, Teresa, you just made me remember too when you were talking about getting up at the crack of dawn and doing push-ups. Usually that's just the training environment. So that's the beginning of our military service. They're teaching you under those conditions, preparing you to serve. Because when you do go to combat, you have to be able to take directions. So they're training you to be able to take directions. And do 20 push-ups or whatever that is. That's what that's for. It's conditioning you to be able to survive in that type of environment. That's not everyday military life. That is a training environment.
Oh, so every day you get to sleep in a little bit more?
Well, no, it's like a job. You're still at a job. You have to be at our jobs at a certain time. So you keep a certain schedule. Most jobs in the military, it's not like you're no longer in training for most jobs. It's just that get up at a certain time, go do your job, and then you come back home. And
Got it. So just like social media, you can't believe everything you see. Like can't believe everything that you watch. Um, I do have one last question, and I'm going to start with Dixie here because we're talking about leaving the military. And during your military, did you experience or witness others experiencing mental health challenges or PTSD? And how did you or they cope with it?
I had some problems getting out because I had just had my son. My dad was very challenging. Was not happy that I was going to get out. We were supposed to be dual military. He was very emotional, and you just got strong. You either accept it or move forward. I think more after the divorce and in regards to keeping it all together, making sure the kids were taken care of. I had a job, I had a place. I didn't have that family support, and I was in Alaska, so you're on your own. But I think having been in the military, I figured what I was going through then was a minor stop in the road. So the military itself makes you stronger. And I always pretty much raised my kids as if we were on a ship. They even said when they went to boot, man, my CC was a piece of cake compared to you. Anyway, the bottom line is I didn't give them any slack. And we were never given any slack at home nor in the military. And you had to take responsibility, bottom line. Really, what I've seen and personally, and women that have challenges prior to going, thinking they're going to go to the military and it's going to get better, they're the ones that really get challenged. And once they get out, they're even more broken. So it comes back to personality and it comes back to inner strength if you're going to survive.
Thank you. How about for you, Teresa? Especially because you were deployed. People think that you were born with it, right? Some may, but majority of the time it's not. It's through your experience and things that you witness and live through in life that if you don't seek help or talk about it, then it can create mental illnesses. So for a lot of people, especially in the Asian culture, we don't tend to talk or share our experiences, especially those experiences who are more on the traumatic side. And with you being deployed and witnessing some of those environment, did you witness any PTSD or experiencing it yourself? And how did you deal with it?
So this is very personal for me because my brother has been diagnosed with PTSD. He didn't go into combat, and we don't have family history of mental illness. And the way my family reacted to that was, you are making this up. Please stop acting out. And it was just amazing that a VA doctor can diagnose him and they knew this, but they were still ignoring it.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's a cultural thing. There's shame, there's denial. And right now, so he's staying with my mom in San Francisco. And I'm noticing that dealing with dysfunction, you become a little bit dysfunctional yourself. So I went through some things, sexual assault early on in my career, kind of just buried that deep in the crevices of my mind. Handled it the best way that I thought I could at that time. So I'm using this time right now to find myself and just self-healing, self-love, self-reflecting, because I can't control people around me. I can only control myself. So that's my journey right now.
Thank you for sharing and thank you for being vulnerable. We tend to bury a lot, right? Because that's our way to protect ourselves. Also, if it's too dramatic, we actually forget about it because that's our brain protects ourselves. In the military, is there therapists available? And are those therapists actually open, right? Because like you said, a VA doctor diagnosed your brother and said that he making it up. So is therapy a big thing in the military? Is that even offered?
So it's not the VA doctor that said that he was making it up. It's my family. My mom just, they said it's making it up. In my case, because I had a clearance, I think it's better now in this situation, but because of the clearance, there was fear of talking to a mental health specialist. I think it's starting to get better now.
And Carmen, how about for yourself? Did you experience personally or witness anyone?
No, I didn't have those experiences personally. I felt protected and safe in my environments. And I do want to honor sisters out there who didn't have the same experience. I did witness a job that I did as a personnel officer in different squadrons. I did witness some very dark things that happened to other airmen. So one in particular that I'll never forget was when I was working in the security forces squadron. And I say the squadron because well, at that time anyway, they had continuous cycles of deployment. So that was very hard on their families. So it's like as soon as they get back, they're going out again. It's very hard to adjust or get used to whatever is going on when you left. So one rotation, one of the airmen came back and he saw that things at home had changed and he had no idea that they changed and he wasn't able to deal with it and he ended up committing suicide. The reason so many reasons why that affects me, but I just remember seeing that airman, like that rotation came back and they came to the office and because when they come and of course get the help that they needed because we were like the human resources in all of the squadrons. So they come back and they say they need this, but they also come back and they share like, hey, this is what we did. And he used to call me LT. He'd be like, LT, this because I was a lieutenant at the time. He'd be like, this is what happened, and we did such and such. And I just remember talking to him, and I was like, we're glad you're back. And then we got word that happened. And it was not just happening in our squadron, it was happening a lot because of the time. It was around September 11th, so a lot of things were going on at that time. And so it just sparked for us. All the leaders had to go and get training. And it was really hard to see because they were so young and just you remember meeting them on the first day or meeting them before they go out and they're so excited and then for those things to happen, it really sticks with you. So
yeah,
I've
There, and speaking of VA, I had to go into counseling and all. I very challenging because that wasn't my upbringing. But bottom line is, I just was straightforward with them. A lot of times, women veterans are challenged by a lot of VA counselors because they've never served. They get an opportunity to work with the VA for paying their master's degree, and so they really don't understand us. And when especially when you guys are doing your MST claims, the VA makes you go over the claim a number of times, and people don't want to repeat that. So that's the problem in regards to counseling. It's good, but I think having a guy certificate to coach, I think coaching is on a better scale versus counseling because counseling puts you back, whereas coaching moves you forward. The VA's got to have a better program And we all go through some traumas. What we have to do is learn to take and self-love. You have to take care of yourself and stand your ground. Otherwise, you get shafted to the point where you cannot return.
And one thing that's better, Teresa, at least I can speak. I've been out for a while, but at that time, whenever things were going on that hurt how a person was doing their job, they had to go and get counsel. Like when it reached a certain level and leadership knew about it, they had to go see a counselor. And it was like a weekly thing. And we would get updates on whether they were going and how it was doing, how they were doing, because they had to make sure that they were good on that front in order to do their job. And so I can only imagine that that has continued to evolve. And I was very proud to see how that took place to the point where if someone missed their counseling, like we had to have a round table meeting with the commander, myself, and the first sergeant. Okay, this such go to counseling. How are they doing? And then that's how they would proceed with assignments. So I hope that that's only evolved from there because I've been out a few years now.
For sure.
But like in the Navy, you have chiefs, and they're, this is the chief becomes the manager, but also the counselor. And a lot of the older guys that were chiefs in the 70s and early 80s when I was in, they after a while they got, because they were not wanting to be counselor, they wanted to be a manager, and we didn't hire you to be a counselor, we hired you to run the Navy.
I mean, like that now it's gotten a lot better, right? From the 70s, the 80s, and early 2000s. I hope that as years progress, we get better and better. And the goal as our nonprofit, Strong, Smart, and Kind Foundation, we want to normalize the conversation of mental health, right? Because mental health is such a broad spectrum. It's not just mental illness. And we're trying to prevent that conversation or have that conversation to prevent you getting to mental illness, right? And I think PTSD and everything else, if we talk about it as a normal thing, it's when we're like, oh my God, or hush, hush, and it becomes a big deal. With a lot of these things, it's like getting a wounds, because depending on how big and how deep your wounds are, how you dress it. Are you gonna just dress it normally? Day after day, it will heal. You might need some medication at the beginning, depending on how deep the wounds is, but you learn there's different type of medications. There's different way to do it without medications. But if you don't talk about it at all, it fester and it can build into something else, right? So whether it's mental illness, physical illness, our goal is to just mental wellness in general. And with that being said, I don't want to hog up all of our time, because now I want to open it up to the audience. If you have any questions for our guests, please type them into the chat or raise your hand, and we'll get to as many as we can. We do want to respect everybody's time. I know that there were some questions earlier that was actually sent in, so I'm going to have Anna, you here? If you want to ask your question, and you would have to unmute. While I wait for Anna, I'm going to read off some of the comments. Marlene says, yes, thank you for your services. It seems like after the service, many have become successful and were able to blend back into society. What made many to them become homeless? Are there a lot of female homelessness?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe we can have somebody on that question first.
Yeah, I'll start that off because I was homeless for a brief period of time, but it wasn't. Because I don't want to blame it on the military. So, but for female veterans, it's a fast growing problem, and it stems from underemployment, that we talked about that happens inside the military that makes it hard. Just education meaning not being able to do the job search effectively. So not having those resources. So the number one thing that can prevent and cut down on that homelessness is education. How do you prepare, especially not just women veterans, all veterans? How do you prepare them for life after the military? How do you job search? How do you make a resume? How do you do an interview? Because none of those things, we're not taught any of those things in the military because we don't have to do them. We know what our next job is going to be. We know what our next level is. We never have to write a resume for it. We never have to interview for it. So if we can get ahead of that, and we can reduce that underemployment, because underemployment is going to eventually have you lead to homelessness. It did for me. And in my situation, I'm not going to blame the military. It's just my husband and I separated. When I got out of the military, it was because I was pregnant. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Like Dixie said, she wanted to be a mom. So did I. So I stayed at home till my son reached a certain age. That was the plan. But during that, my family dynamic changed. And so I had to get a job to support the family. But I was underemployed and I didn't know how to job search. I had a master's degree when I went out of the military. I had experience, but I didn't know how to make a resume. And I will even go a step further to say I didn't know how to act on the job because I was just so used to the military. I'm going to go get my work done and that's it. I didn't realize in the civilian world, you had to adapt to company culture. You had to be someone that people liked. I didn't adapt to that at all. And so that my underemployment led me not to being able to pay my bills. I lost my house. I was homeless for a little while. But to answer that question, there are a lot of factors that can lead to that. But studies show that the number one thing that can prevent it, helping people make that transition successfully from the military to the civilian world.
I want to add to that too, because I'm in San Diego and we have a high population of homeless veterans here. And I actually met two veterans who experienced homelessness. And it's shocking to me. It probably shouldn't be that we hear about it, but actually meeting somebody in person who was homeless. This lady was working for ADT. I needed an alarm system for the house. And we just started sharing stories. And she was a chief. I think she was a chief when she got out, E7. And she was with her 3 young babies living in her car because they told her, sorry, you cannot stay in base housing anymore. You need to figure this out. Now, she had her retirement, but the retirement is not enough to live in San Diego, which is a super high cost of living area. But then her dad came, helped her out. So they're in an apartment now and she's figured it out. So the education in my head, she should have been more informed about the timeline of moving out of base housing and trying to find the place. And then the other person that I met, he was a server at Texas Roadhouse, and we were using our military vouchers for the free meal. So he just started talking to us, and he actually shared that he was getting ready to re-enlist. He was for sure going to re-enlist and was told at the last minute, you did not pass your medical, you cannot re-enlist, you have to get out. And he was not prepared. So he ended up being homeless. And there is a group here in San Diego that was able to help him out. But the housing there's a long wait list. So he was able to take advantage of that. And then he's now using his GI Bill, getting his VA benefits, and working, and was able to recover from that.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Marlene, for that question. Okay, so this is for open to any of the speakers. If someone joins the military, is it considered a salary position? What are the financial benefits of serving? I don't know who wants to take that question.
Basically, what I like to speak financially. This is what the military needs to do. They need, from the beginning of boot camp or the initial schooling, they need to teach balance of financial planning. And they also need to teach positive culture. And it comes back to the leaders.
So yes, the military is considered a salary position. You get paid twice a month. You get a food allowance, you get housing allowance, and you get a clothing allowance. The clothing allowance is every year. Food and housing is every into each paycheck. Well, it's monthly. And then you get free medical insurance. So what Dixie is saying is so important because when people get out, they need to take into account, okay, salary, this is my current salary, but now I'm also going to have to purchase health insurance, life insurance. I got to have a food budget. I'll be able to pay my rent, or, I'm even able to buy a house because of, and then they have to determine, cost of living that they don't have to think about while they're in the military. So, like just saying, that type of training is imperative. And if you're not on top of that, even if you do get that successful job out of the military, it's probably not going to work because you don't know how to manage your money and you don't know what you need, and it can lead to that type of spiral. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I can personally relate to that myself because I was not in the military, but I was in a convent. And similar, we're given an allowance on a monthly basis, and you didn't have to worry about anything. I mean, work, we did not see our salary because whatever, most of the time, everything was done through volunteering. And if we were getting paid, it goes to the mother house. So we never get to see paychecks, but we don't have to deal with rent and food and all that. We just get an allowance to do whatever it is. And when we left, it's the same thing. You're right. You have to know how to manage money. And for those who are part of this podcast, or if you know of anybody that do, be the resource, you can contact SSK Foundation. .org, and we can connect you to the veterans here, Vets to Industry. Or we also have at SSK Foundation, we have professionals as far as estate planning, financial advisors, life agents, like all of these different finances, because why we think it's so important at SSK, because it's part of our mental health segment, our pillars. Of stress has been connected to money. So that's the reason why having that financial literacy is so important to us, right? And I'm going to go back to sharing the screen because we are now at 2:05 and I want to make sure that we are being consistent with our time. And on behalf of everyone at the SSK Foundation, I want to really extend our deepest gratitude to our guests, Teresa, Dixie, and Carmen, for sharing your remarkable stories tonight. Thank you so much for your decades of service to our country. And also, thank you to everyone here who joined us for this very special Veterans Day podcast. It's your presence and engagement that makes this conversation really meaningful. And I wish we had more time because I actually had more questions and I had to actually cut off one of An's questions. Sorry about that. But I wanted to make sure we stick on time. Before we do sign off, I want to share some exciting news about what's coming up at SSK Foundation. So as you watch this podcast, it's in November. So what you're seeing now is the events for 2026, because it would have already been the end of the year for 2025. We have new and exciting initiatives for 2026, and registration is actually already open because I am the kind of person that I plan 3 years out. That's how I was taught. And our signature events have limited spots, so we encourage you to register now to ensure you're included in the events that inspire you most. You can go to our website, sskfoundation.org, to look up any of these events. The upcoming events here is our in-person workshops designed to empower and connect. We have one. We have our annual Women Empowerment Summit is on International Women's Day, March 8th. Our annual humanitarian trip to Vietnam this coming year, the 2026, it'll be to Vietnam. And we usually visit different orphanages and indigenous villagers. We also have our annual youth leadership camp because we really believe in raising the next generation of strong, smart, and kind individuals. So for more details or to reserve your spot, please visit our website at sskfoundation.org or email us right here at info@sskfoundation.org. So we hope to see everyone either one or more of these transformative events. And thank you again so much for joining us today. Please remember to stay strong, smart, and kind. You can follow us on any of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. We are pretty much everywhere. And we'll see you at the next event. Thank you, everybody.